Hello and welcome to Cancer Update 37. It is the 25th of July 2023. I didn't post yesterday and I do apologise for that, but it is something that we are going to have to get used to because sometimes I'm just either too tired, too fatigued, too nauseous or too busy to post. So I know some of you do worry about me when I don't post in a day. Please try to be okay with that. I would say if I don't post for one day, just think Paul's fatigued. If I don't post for 2 days, mild concern. If I don't post for 3 days, ring the police. Okay, let's just go with that, right? So on the 23rd, I went out for dinner. We went to a Thai restaurant and I went out with Rick. You might remember Rick from Cancer Update 24 when I sang the second verse of the Tra La La song. So Rick was there at the Thai restaurant. I also went out with Irene. Irene and I went to high school together. So Irene and Rick know each other from high school. I went to high school with both of them. And Karen. Karen and I know each other from the 1990s when we were in the Northbridge nightclub scene. And it was nice to catch up with Karen as well. So we went out for dinner on the 23rd. Yesterday on the 24th, I did a few things, but overall I was feeling quite fatigued. What I did do was, and this is the only one I can find quickly, when you go through the chemo process, you get given a lot of pamphlets and as you probably do, you tend to just throw them down and get on with life. I tried to actually read some of them yesterday. I didn't read all of them, but I did read some of them. So I did that yesterday. The other thing I did yesterday was I went and I had a massage. One of the really unfortunate things about having bad ascites is it's very difficult for you to lie on your stomach. And one of the things that I would normally do in my life to bring myself joy is go and get a massage. But when you've got 12 litres of ascites, you can't do that. Now that I've only got 6 litres of ascites, I decided to go and have a massage. I made a very brief video at that massage therapist's house. So I'll just cut to it now. This is me yesterday.
Hi there, I've just had a massage, so I'm feeling a little bit better.
So as you can see, I enjoyed that massage. It did help a lot. It is, for those of you that do have massages, you will know that you just feel lovely afterwards. And for those of you that don't, please do try one. Do try one. Just go and get a half-hour neck, shoulder, back massage. Just try it. If you don't like it after that, that's fine. But I dare say you might find that you do like it. Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about today is my best ex-girlfriend ever, because she is moving into my house later today. And that means she is going to start appearing in some of these daily updates. And I need to give you some of the background as to how my best ex-girlfriend ever came into my life. So her real name is Caroline. Caroline and I met on, I think, eHarmony. It was certainly one of those online web dating apps. We went for a first date. I'll tell you how it went. It was kind of funny. So as you probably know by now, I have done some interesting things in my life, including doing porn, right? So I remember it was on, I think, the second date, and we were down at Clancy's Fish Pub in Applecross, and we just had dinner there. And in my head, I just decided, I think I like this girl, but it's unfair to continue to date her if I don't tell her about something as significant as having done porn. So I'm on the second date and I said to her, look, I really like you, but there's something I need to tell you about me. I've done porn. Are you okay with that? And she was kind of shocked, but she was not totally put off by it, which was, to be honest, was my big fear, was that she would just go, nah, I'm out of here, and she would just run. But she was okay with it. I mean, you know, she was okay with it. Let's leave it at that. And that didn't prevent us becoming further friends. Then, as time went by, we became better and better friends. And I remembered advice that I'd had from various other friends of mine that said, your wife should be your best friend. And I thought, well, Caroline is my best friend. Maybe I should think about having her as my life partner. Maybe she should be my wife. And the first step to that would be her being my girlfriend. So I asked her if she would be my girlfriend, and she said yes, and that was nice. And then we started, we started hanging out, basically. I might actually try and find you some photos from this period. There's a funny photo of her and I removing an engine out of a Hyundai Elantra in my carport. I'll see if I can find that photo for you, and if I do, I'll post it at the end of this sequence. And there was another photo of when Caroline came down to Tyre Save Medina, and I taught Caroline how to balance a tyre, because I'm a big believer that females shouldn't be put off by the automotive industry just because they're female. I feel like females are absolutely capable of repairing a car. And I wanted to demonstrate to Caroline that she was just as good at balancing a wheel as any guy was. So I took her and I taught her how to balance a tyre, and she balanced her own tyre. And she was really proud of that. And I took a photo of it, and I will find it for you. So our friendship developed, and so we'd taken the engine out of the Elantra here at my house in Ardross. Caroline had learned how to balance tyres down at the tyre shop that I worked in. And Caroline had worked out that I really needed a different house to live in, because this house that I've got here is not great for working on cars. And she looked on realestate.com.au, and she came across a disused garage down in Serpentine. It had been a garage, like a petrol station and a mechanical workshop, but it had fallen into disrepair and it was completely shut down. It was riddled with asbestos. It was also riddled with rat skeletons and dust and all kinds of horrible things. But it was for sale, and it had been on the market for a year. No one had put in an offer for a year, so the price had gone down and down and down. And Caroline brought it to my attention and said, hey, how do you feel about this? I said, yeah, I don't mind. And she'd also found another one up near Parkerville. And we went and looked at the one in Parkerville, and I remember it was September, October. And I remember that because it was spring. And Caroline and I both have hay fever. And we went out to Parkerville, and the golden wattle and the bottle brushes, which are two West Australian natives that have huge amounts of pollen in them, were flowering. And Caroline and I went out there, and our sinuses just both flared up. We both had red eyes, and we were both in a really bad way. And we both looked at each other and said, I don't think we can live here. And we both went, yeah, I don't think we can either. And we then went down to Serpentine, and we thought Serpentine would probably be the same, that there would be lots and lots of pollen trees, and it would be basically unsuitable. We went down there and we found that actually there were a few bottle brushes and a few golden wattles and a few other grass trees and things, but it was nowhere near as bad as Parkerville, and it was also slightly later. I think it was October by this stage, and the pollen had settled down a bit. Long story short, we put in an offer on that property and we got it. So in November of that year, I forget which year it is. Just hang on. I did just look this up. I think it's either 2013 or 2014. Do you know where it is? I've started making a central source of truth for all of my photos. it's on my central source of truth, which is on an external hard drive. It's either 2013 or 24. It's 2013. Okay, so it was November 2013. Caroline and I had our offer accepted for Serpentine, and we bought it. And we then moved in, and whenever we met the locals, they would say, "Oh, you've bought the old Serpentine Garage," because it used to be called the Serpentine Garage, but it was now old. So they used to say to us, "Oh, you've bought the old Serpentine Garage." So when I came to register the business name, I registered it as the old Serpentine Garage Proprietary Limited. And that was how that was. I've just realised I should have worn a different shirt for this. I'll tell you what, we'll take a break. I'm going to change my shirt and I'm going to come back. Hold on. Okay, so this is the shirt, and you'll notice that the logo is the old Serpentine Garage, and the S in Serpentine is a snake. I'm really into etymology, and Serpentine is a reference to being snake-like, and the reason that the Serpentine River is called the Serpentine River is that it twists and turns like a snake. So it is serpentine, as in snake-like. And for those of you that work on motor vehicles, you'll know that the drive belt that goes around the front of the engine is called the serpentine belt, and that is because that belt is snake-like. So to honour the etymology of the word serpentine, I made the S into a snake. That was how that went. So Caroline and I bought the old Serpentine Garage, and it was shut down at that stage. Caroline was working for Chevron Texaco. She was in the quarantine department for Barrow Island. So she was preventing any bad animals or plants getting onto the island, because Barrow Island is a Class A nature reserve. It has some very, very sensitive animals and plants, I should say, on it. And Caroline's job was to make sure that all of the cargo that was coming, particularly going to the island, but to some extent coming from the island, was quarantine secured, so that those animals and plants on Barrow Island would be safe. So Caroline was working for Chevron Texaco. I was not working for anyone at that stage. So what I went about doing was rehabilitating the site. So I, removed all of the asbestos cladding and put up HardieFlex. I removed some other cladding and put up weatherboards. And essentially what I wanted to do was I wanted to honour my father. So you would remember that I was really close with my dad, and I bonded with my dad with, with working on cars. So I wanted to make a 1960s garage. I wanted to make something that he would be proud of visiting if he could. Of course, he'd passed away in 1997, and this was 2013, or 2014 probably by this stage. So he'd been passed away for some time by that stage. But I wanted to do something to honour him. So I made the garage up like a 1960s garage. And I did a pretty good job of it. So, and if you do live in Perth, Caroline and I have since sold that property, and it's now called Speedy Spanners. It's 2426 Southwestern Highway, Serpentine. It's now called Speedy Spanners, but if you go into the reception there, the layout of that reception is pretty much as I made it. The new owners, Brendan and Lisa Gale, have retained the 1960 throwback aspect of the garage. So a lot of those interesting things that you'll find in reception there and the photos you'll see around the place were put there by me. Lisa and Brendan have added to them, but the start of that museum, shall we say, was me and Caroline. You'll also notice off to the side, if you go out to Speedy Spanners, is a cafe. And later on, when we were doing up the council approval notes to get all council approved, we didn't want it to just be an automotive garage. Caroline was pretty keen to have a cafe. And in choosing the name for the cafe, we wanted to have something that had an attachment to mechanical work, but also obviously it was a food cafe. So we came up with the name The Rusty Nut. So Caroline completely invented and established and ran a cafe called The Rusty Nut. When I say invented, she took a section of the garage that was just 4 walls, and she turned it into a cafe. She used white subway tiles, and she went with a really clean look. She got a beautiful brand new coffee machine. There was a pie warmer. There was all this stuff. We had a servery window out into an area we called Cappuccino Lane. And we had tables and chairs out in Cappuccino Lane. And later on, we put a sunshade over it. And if you go out to Speedy Spanners now, that sunshade and Cappuccino Lane are still there. So we did that, and we did the, we laid, they're called frogged bricks. So have you ever seen bricks that have like a rectangular section, like a pyramid cut out of them? Those are called frogged bricks, and they're not so popular now, but they were popular in the 1960s. And I went around collecting them. And I think in Cappuccino Lane now, I think Brendan and Lisa have got it covered up. But I think it's covered up with AstroTurf. If you lift it up though, you'll see that the bricks around the edging are all frogged bricks. And I collected those up painstakingly by looking on Gumtree and Facebook Marketplace and around anywhere I could. And even one time I went down to Collie, I think it was, and we went out to one of the old railway sidings and we found some old frogged bricks out there just in a smashed up ruin. We went to a lot of effort to get those frogged bricks, and they are still there on the edging of Cappuccino Lane. So if you get to go to Speedy Spanners, 2426 Southwest Highway, Serpentine, do go and see it. And those frog bricks were put there by Caroline and I. So that was pretty cool. So Caroline and I owned the Serpentine property for, I forget exactly, but it was about 4 to 5 years. So we sold it in something like 2017. I think we sold it in 2017. So we owned it for maybe 4.5 years. And we sold it to Brendan and Lisa Gale, who own it now. And Caroline and I were in the process of breaking up at the stage that we sold that property. And that was a really tricky time. And I'll just try and explain it to you this way. That, let me put it to you really simply. Caroline and I are better friends than we are boyfriend-girlfriend. So to revisit the original statement was, your wife should be like your best friend. And that was initially what had made me want to have a more deep relationship with Caroline. As it turned out though, we really are just better friends. The more and more we tried to be closer to getting married, let's say, the more and more strained it felt. And we eventually came to the realization that actually our best time was back then when we were just friends, and we treated it like we were just friends, and we interacted with each other like we were just friends. And we went through a pretty tricky time around the time that we sold Serpentine Garage, but we got there. And now we are back to being good friends. So just to be clear, we are just friends. There's no sexual element. We just, I would say love each other, but as friends. And when my cancer diagnosis happened, Caroline was on a world trip. Oh, hang on, I have to back up a bit. So 6 months ago, Caroline and I were both working at the health department by that stage, and I had left because I wasn't loving it at the health department. And Caroline stayed a couple of months longer than me, but eventually she left as well. And Caroline said, I'm going on a 1-year world trip, because one of the other things that really makes Caroline and I compatible as friends is we both love travel. So Caroline said, I'm going on a world trip for a year. And I was like, yeah, that's really cool. You go do that. So Caroline rented out her house because she owns a house over in Maylands, and she rented that house out for a year, then went off into the Great Wild Yonder, and she went to Central America and then South America. So she did a few countries there. I won't, maybe she'll tell you about that when she starts being on these updates. She can tell you herself. And then my news of cancer came along. So Caroline indicated to me, I would like to come back and help you, but I have got a few commitments I need to sort out before I can do that. And I said, yeah, okay, like that's perfectly cool. So Caroline came back, and when she said that, she was on the Galapagos Islands in Ecuador. So she came back from the Galapagos Islands to Ecuador for, I think, about a week, and spent a week with me. But then she had some other commitments where she had to go to Greece and France in particular. And that is the holiday that she finished yesterday. So from today, Caroline is going to stay with me, because remember, she rented her house out for a year, but she's only 6 months in, which means for the next 6 months, she actually can't live in her own house because she's rented it out. So we've agreed that as a minimum, Caroline will live in my house for the next 6 months, and she's got a job back at the health department because they love her there, as they love me there as well. And they have, effectively begged for Caroline to go back there, and Caroline has said yes. So Caroline is going to work back at the health department and live here. And when she's not at work, she'll obviously be taking care of me. So she moves back in later today. She has actually arrived back in Perth now, but we decided that it was an appropriate thing that she stay in a hotel for 1 day as a self-quarantine, because I'm immunocompromised because I've started my chemo. So she is in a hotel in Perth at the moment, and she's going to assess how well she is. And on the assumption that she's well, she'll be moving in later today. If she's not well, she's going to stay in a hotel for a couple more days, or however long it takes until she feels that she is well. So Caroline will be moving back in later today. So if you hear me referring to Caroline or Kazzy or Best Ex-Girlfriend Ever, or Bege, which is B-E-G-E, Best Ex-Girlfriend Ever, then that is the same girl, and she's moving in later today. So I'll sign off with whatever photos I can find to further illustrate the story I've told today, and I'll update you more tomorrow, and perhaps you'll even get to meet Caroline then. So thank you very much. I'll see you later.